Well, howdy doody everybody. In this video we're going to discuss your compression plug and its top cap. They go together of course, and they sit in this area and they're responsible for holding your steering mechanism together. So what's its real purpose and how can you properly use your compression plug? So here's your compression plug and its top cap, and the top cap isn't just for looks, it has a purpose as well. And it fits inside your fork steerer, inside there, and sits around the clamping area of your head stem there. And the purpose of this compression plug is to set up your steering area. By that it means that your head stem bearings are nice and firm, so there's no looseness, especially over bumps, and it also still allows your steering to be free. The other purpose that this compression plug has is it sits inside your stem and just gives a bit of reinforcement to your carbon steerer against the radial compression forces of the clamp from your stem on the carbon fork steerer itself. So they're the two purposes that the compression plug has. Now if your frame and fork or complete bike come with an ordinary compression plug, not the longer one, then it may be so that what the manufacturer is saying, that the plug only needs to be there to set up your head set area, not to reinforce your fork steerer against the stem clamp forces. Now what in effect they're saying is once you've set it up, you can take the plug out and you don't need it. You can ride your bike without anything in there at all. Now I don't recommend it, but that's in effect what they're saying. So you need to check with your manufacturer of your bike or your frame as to what's going on, what sort of compression plug is needed. If you've got a third-party pair of forks, say you've got a titanium frame and you've got the carbon forks that you bought with a carbon steerer, then you'll need to consult the manufacturer of those forks as to what compression plug they recommend you use. Kenya's one brand where not all their models require the compression plug to reinforce the fork steerer. Let's have a look inside here. Taking the top cap off and looking down inside the steerer, you can see the compression plug is definitely a long way down. And there's no steerer reinforcement in between. In fact, the compression plug is 3 centimeters down. Undoing the compression plug with the 5mm and putting the little screw back in to pull it up, the top cap. As we pull it out, there it is. That was way down here, and not only that, it's plastic. Aluminium cone and plastic little expander there. With a meager compression plug like that and nothing from there to the top of the fork steerer, there's really no internal support against the stem's clamping forces. Having a look at the fork steerer itself, its outside circumference should be as close to perfectly round as possible, and the same with the inside diameter here of your stem should be nice and round, so they fit nice and snug together. Now, a round pipe with even radial compression on it is actually very strong. It's uneven pressure that causes the problems. So when doing up your head stem bolts, always do them up evenly. Don't get one and tighten it all the way up to what's recommended amount and then do the other one. Do them bit at a time, nice and evenly. And use a torque wrench and always adhere to the recommended torque settings. In the usual case for this one, it's 5 Newton meters, so set 5 and go bit by bit, nice and evenly until they're both 5 Newton meters. And when you put your compression plug in and you tighten it up, don't go over tightening it. Just put it in so it's just nice and firm, and it will pull your headset up and it will put a nice even pressure on the inside of your steerer. So never over tighten or you'll be in trouble. Just put it nice and firm, just enough like that. Maybe just 2 fingers. That's about all you need. So considering a few issues, your fork spacer should slide up and down nicely and it shouldn't catch on any part of the steerer. If you find this a bit of a bulge or it won't go past a bulge on your fork steerer, there's a good chance that the compression plug has been over tightened. Now it's not necessary to over tighten the compression plug at all. it should sit in there nice and firmly and set up your headset area. Once that's established, then that just sits there and does nothing. So the other thing is it might have a thinner fork steerer and require a longer plug. So you've got the wrong compression plug in there. Now that may not be a manufacturer's fault. It may be that someone else has put in the wrong plug. So you need to address that issue and again consult the manufacturer of the fork. Some people may experience the head stem sliding up the fork steerer just a little bit and the headset comes loose, and so they might resort to carbon fibre grip paste. So is that a good idea? Is it good to use carbon fibre grip paste on your fork steerer? Well, generally the answer is no. And the reason is the carbon fibre grip paste is usually made from glass grit or tiny plastic spheres. And this can scratch and eat away at the lamination on your fork steerer or even into the carbon fibre itself. And you don't want that. The other thing is when your stem is on, of course, and you're riding away, and if you have a bump or you have an accident and you've got carbon fibre grip paste on there, it's going to grip tighter and you may damage your steerer or rip it off completely. You don't want that. So without the paste, it's more apt to slip and better to slip, and then you can reset it later on than to damage your steerer. The other thing about carbon paste, it can run further down into your top bearing. You don't want carbon paste in your bearing. Now if your bike comes with an ordinary compression plug but you'd still like to reinforce your fork steerer, well, you can either buy a longer compression plug for it, or you can use the compression plug that you've already got, and I'll show you a quick easy DIY way to reinforce the plug system. So the two major sizes of fork steerer tube are 1.1/8" and 1.25". Chances are you've got 1.1/8" because the 1.25" is the newer oversized one. So we need to fill that gap there between your plug and your inside of the fork steerer, that wobbly bit there. You also need to consider the depth from the top of your compression plug upwards to the top of your steerer, to your carbon fibre steerer. So that's those two measurements. Just so happens with my particular system I can use this piece of poly, and I cut a piece of this off and it fits nicely in there. The piece of poly I'm using may not be suitable for your fork steerer. The main thing is to fill the steerer's internal area as best as possible, maybe using a piece of plastic or metal piping. Right, so here's our piece and here's our plug. It fits over the plug quite nicely, but the inside of the fork steerer, it doesn't quite fit in. It's just that fraction, annoying little fraction. So what we're going to do is cut it this way and take off about 1 millimetre, and that will fit in nicely. Cutting and filing this piece of poly will reduce the overall diameter so that it fits between the compression plug and the fork steerer. Making sure the ends fit nice and square. So a piece of poly fits just inside the fork steerer, and hopefully the plug should just fit inside that piece of poly as well. Now this is quite firm to get in. It's not tight, but it's really quite firm, and that's good. That means it's a nice, wouldn't say tight, fit. So that's a great fit. And just need to go down to your stem so that it holds your bearings. So that's great. So it's going to support now your whole steerer tube from the inside. So that when you do your clamps up, you'll be fine. No crushing your steerer tube. Right, now we just align the headset bearings. If you want a bit more reassurance, think about a carbon seat post. It's about the same thickness as your fork steerer and has a clamp here which is more than 5 Newton meters. It also has to hold all your body weight with all the bumps going as well. Whereas your fork steerer has a little bit of your body weight and a few of the bumps, but nowhere near as much pressure and forces as going on here. If anywhere, your seat post will usually break at other points along the way, not down here. Well, there you go. I hope you found that helpful, or at least reassuring anyway. So I'll see you on the road. Happy riding, and I'll see you in the next video. Well, it was relaxing. No sweat.
Another word, relaxing.
If the pencil goes there, that'd be swingers too, wouldn't it?
No, that's fine.